Chancellor Vorneth stood before the Council of 12 and felt the weight of an entire civilization pressing down on his shoulders. The great chamber was silent. Representatives from 12 different species sat in their designated seats, but none of them spoke. They already knew what he was going to say. "The 7th Fleet has fallen," Vorneth announced. His voice echoed in the massive room. "Admiral Kress and 40,000 souls are gone. The defensive line at Vorax Prime no longer exists." A sound of grief rippled through the chamber. The Malthari representative closed all 6 of his eyes. The Fenari ambassador's feathers turned gray with sorrow. Even the stone-faced Druin seemed to crack with despair. "How long do we have?" asked Elder Sitha of the Veluks. Her ancient voice trembled. Vorneth consulted the datapad in his 4-fingered hand. 60 rotations. Perhaps less. The Kethar swarm moves faster than our projections. Right. They have consumed 7 of our worlds in 18 months. Nothing we do slows them down. Even the name sent fear through the hearts of every species in the collective. They were not an army. They were not even truly alive in the way other beings understood life. They were a swarm, a hunger-given form, a billion creatures sharing one terrible mind. They did not negotiate. They did not stop. They simply consumed everything in their path and moved on to the next meal. "What options remain?" asked Commander Terrell of the Druin military forces. Vorneth shook his head slowly. "We have committed everything. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon in our arsenal. The Kethar adapts faster than we can develop new strategies. Our combined fleets have been reduced to less than 30% strength. We cannot win this war through conventional means." "Then we die," said the Fenari ambassador flatly. "Die. And everything we've built for 10,000 years dies with us." The silence that followed was the heaviest Vorneth had ever experienced. He looked around the chamber at faces filled with defeat. These were the leaders of 12 great civilizations. They had built wonders among the stars. They had achieved peace between species that had once been enemies. And now they would all be food for an endless swarm. "There must be something," said a small voice from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned to look. A young Veluxi female stood near the archives section. She was clearly not supposed to speak in this meeting. Junior archivists did not address the Council of 12. But desperation had made the old rules meaningless. "Forgive me," she said quickly, "but I have been searching the ancient records as instructed, looking for any weapon, any ally, any solution our ancestors might have discovered. And I found something." Vorneth waved his hand. "Speak, young one. We are beyond formality now." The archivist hurried forward with a data crystal clutched in her thin fingers. 200 years ago, our explorers made first contact with a species in the distant arm of the galaxy. They called themselves humans. The contact was brief, and afterward all records were classified at the highest level. Humans. Elder Sitha frowned. "I have heard this name. A primitive species, yes? Short-lived creatures, barely capable of reaching their own moon." That was the initial assessment, the archivist agreed. But the classification documents tell a different story. The diplomats who met them left warnings. Very serious warnings. She activated the data crystal, and ancient text floated in the air before the council. Vorneth read the words with growing confusion. "Species classification. Human warning level. Maximum recommendation. Avoid all contact notes. From Chief Diplomat Varax, these creatures are deeply troubling. They are physically weak. Their lifespans are laughably short. Their technology is primitive. Yet something about them disturbs me greatly. They ask questions no other species has ever asked. They showed curiosity about our weapon systems that felt predatory rather than academic. When we demonstrated our defensive capabilities, they did not seem impressed. They seemed to be taking notes. Additional note: I have studied many species. I have never encountered beings who find joy in struggle the way humans do. They speak of their wars with what I can only describe as fondness. They grow stronger through suffering. They are not to be trusted. They are not to be contacted. They are dangerous in ways I cannot fully articulate. Final recommendation: do not invite humans into galactic affairs. They will change everything, and we may not survive the changes." The council members exchanged confused glances. "This makes no sense," Commander Trell said. How can a primitive, short-lived species be dangerous to civilizations as advanced as ours? I do not know, Vorneth admitted, but our ancestors feared them enough to hide these records. Perhaps they saw something we are missing. Elder Sitha leaned forward. And what do you propose, Chancellor? That we contact these humans and ask for their help? We have nothing to offer them. Our worlds are burning. Our fleets are broken. Why would any species answer such a call? Vorneth thought for a long moment. The faces of the dead flashed through his mind. Admiral Kress, who had served the Collective for 60 years. The children of Vorax Prime, who had never known war until the swarm arrived. The billions already consumed by the endless hunger of the Cathar. Because we have no other choice, he said finally. We will send a message. We will tell them exactly what we face. We'll not lie or exaggerate. We'll simply ask if anyone is listening, and if they are willing to help strangers they have never met. And if they refuse, asked the Fenari ambassador, then we are no worse than before. But if our ancestors were right about humans being dangerous, perhaps they will be dangerous to our enemies as well. The vote was unanimous. There was nothing left to lose. The transmission was sent that night, traveled across the vast emptiness of space, carrying the desperate plea of 12 dying civilizations. It spoke of the Cathar swarm. It spoke of worlds consumed and people lost. It asked for nothing specific because the Collective had nothing specific to offer in return. 3 weeks passed. The swarm grew closer. Hope faded with each passing day. Then, on the 22nd day, a single ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Collective territory. It was small, barely larger than a shuttle. Its hull was dented and scarred. It looked ancient, held together by determination and nothing else. The Collective flagship hailed the vessel immediately. Unknown ship, identify yourself, a calm voice responded. It was warm and steady, carrying no fear despite being surrounded by the remains of a shattered fleet. This is the human vessel, Persistent Hope. We received your transmission. It took us a while to get here. Sorry about that. Vorneth grabbed the communication device himself. You came. Actually came. Of course we came. The human voice paused. Now tell us about this enemy of yours. We want to know everything. What they eat, how they think, what makes them afraid. Everything afraid. Vorneth blinked. The Cathar do not feel fear. They are a hive mind. They do not have individual emotions. There was a soft laugh from the human ship. Everything feels fear, friend. Some things just haven't found the right reason yet. Let us dock with your flagship. We have a lot of work to do and not much time to do it. As the tiny human ship approached the massive Collective vessel, Vorneth felt something he had not felt in months. He did not know if it was hope or something else entirely. But for the first time since the war began, he felt like perhaps the ending had not yet been written. The humans had arrived. Everything was about to change, with no hope left. They called humanity the most dangerous species alive. Part to the docking bay of the Collective flagship had been prepared for the human visitors. Security teams lined the walls. Medical staff stood ready. Weapons were charged but hidden. The Collective did not know what to expect from the species their ancestors had marked as dangerous. Chancellor Vorneth waited at the front of the reception group. His heart beat rapidly in his chest. Behind him stood Commander Trell of the Druin military and Elder Sitha of the Veluxi Council. They represented the best of what remained of their alliance. The airlock hissed open. 5 humans walked through. Vorneth felt its expectations crumble immediately. He had imagined warriors, massive, armored killing machines bred for violence. Creatures that would make the Cathar tremble at the sight of them. Instead, he saw 5 ordinary-looking beings. They were small, smaller than most Collective species. Their bodies seemed soft and fragile. They wore simple clothing, not armor. They carried datapads, not weapons. The one at the front was the most surprising of all. She was old. Her hair was white. Her skin was wrinkled, and she walked with a slight limp. Yet her eyes were sharp and bright, taking in everything around her with quick intelligence. Chancellor Vorneth? She asked. Her voice was the same calm tone from the transmission. Yes, I am Chancellor Vorneth, struggled to hide his disappointment. You are the human response team? The old woman smiled. I am Admiral Chen. Retired technically, but retirement got boring. This is my team. Dr. Williams handles medical analysis. Engineers Park and Okonkwo will study your technology and theirs. And this is Professor Singh, who specializes in xenopsychology. Vorneth stared at them. We are facing the greatest threat in galactic history. Billions have died. And Earth sent 5 people, one of them a retired officer and another a professor. Admiral Chen did not seem offended. Quality over quantity, Chancellor. We are here to assess the situation. More will come if needed. Commander Trell stepped forward, his stone face hard with anger. This is an insult. We asked for warriors. We asked for weapons. We asked for salvation. And you send academics? The human engineer named Park smiled slightly. Sir, with respect, you have been fighting this war your way for 18 months. How is that working out for you? The silence was painful. Admiral Chen gestured toward the corridor. Take us to your command center. Show us everything you have on the Kethar. Battle recordings, biological samples, communication intercepts, fleet movements. We need to understand your enemy before we can help you defeat them. For 3 days, the humans studied. They watched thousands of hours of combat footage. They examined Kethar corpses in the medical bay. They read every report, every analysis, every failed strategy the collective had attempted. They asked questions constantly. Strange questions that the collective officers did not understand. What sounds do they make when they attack? Do they ever hesitate? Even for a moment. Have you tried communicating with them? What do they do with the bodies of their own dead? Do they sleep? Do they play? Do they do anything except consume? Commander Trell grew frustrated. Why do these things matter? They are monsters. They eat and they kill. There is nothing more to understand. Professor Singh looked up from her notes. There is always more to understand, Commander. The Kethar are not monsters. They are a species with a survival strategy. Every strategy has weaknesses. We just need to find theirs. On the 4th day, Admiral Chen called a meeting in the main conference room. The Council of 12 attended via hologram. Every surviving military commander watched from their ships. Chen stood before them, a tiny old woman facing the leaders of 12 civilizations. I have completed my assessment, she said. And I have good news and bad news. Start with the bad news, Vorneth said. He had learned to expect the worst. The bad news is that you cannot win this war the way you have been fighting it. Your strategies are predictable. Your tactics are defensive. You are trying to hold territory against an enemy that does not care about territory. The Kethar do not want your planets. They want your biomass. You have been treating this like a conventional war. It is not. It is a hunting expedition, and you are the prey. The holographic council members shifted uncomfortably. And the good news? Elder Sitha asked. Chen smiled. It was a warm smile, but there was something sharp underneath it. The good news is that the Kethar have never faced a predator before. They have only ever been the hunter. They do not know how to be afraid. We are going to teach them. Commander Trell shook his head. You cannot make a hive mind feel fear. They share one consciousness. Individual emotions do not exist for them. Individual emotions? No, Professor Singh agreed. But collective survival instincts? Yes. The Kethar swarm has existed for millions of years. It has consumed hundreds of species. It has never been seriously threatened. Somewhere in that collective consciousness is a very old, very deep instinct that says avoid danger. We are going to wake that instinct up. Dr. Williams stepped forward. We have analyzed their biology. The Kethar communicates through chemical signals and quantum-linked neural networks. Disrupt those signals, and you create confusion. Confusion leads to mistakes. Mistakes lead to losses. Losses, accumulated over time, trigger defensive responses. What you call fear. Engineer Okonkwo pulled up a holographic display of the Kethar fleet movements. They move in patterns. Predictable patterns. They expect prey to run, so they spread out to encircle. They expect resistance to crumble, so they commit fully to attacks. They have never faced an enemy that hits back from unexpected directions. They have never faced an enemy that refuses to behave like prey. Warneth listened to all of this with growing confusion. This sounds like a strategy. But strategies require forces. We have lost 70% of our fleet. What forces will execute these plans? Admiral Chen nodded. That is why I sent a message to Earth 3 days ago. I asked for volunteers. Volunteers for what? For the most dangerous, most unpredictable, most completely unreasonable military operation in human history. Chen's eyes sparkled. I ask for troublemakers. People who hate being told something is impossible. People who get bored when things are too easy. Communication officer interrupted. Chancellor, we are detecting hyperspace signatures. Multiple signatures. Approaching from the human sector, everyone turned to the display screens. Points of light began appearing one after another. 10 ships. Then 50. Then 100. Then 200, 300 human vessels dropped out of hyperspace and formed up around a tiny, persistent hope. They were mismatched and strange. Old warships next to converted cargo freighters. Racing yachts beside mining vessels that had been fitted with weapons. A chorus of human voices filled the communication channels. Some were young, some were old. Some spoke with accents the universal translator struggled to process, but they all carried the same message. Heard someone needed help. Where do we sign up? Admiral Chen watched the fleet arrive with satisfaction. Chancellor Vornith. Meet the volunteer corps. 300 ships crewed by 15,000 humans who dropped everything to come help people they have never met. Vorneth stared at the display in disbelief. Why? Why would they do this? We cannot pay them. We cannot promise them victory. We cannot even promise they will survive. Chen shrugged. Someone asked for help. That is enough for most humans. Now, let us get to work. We have a swarm to terrify. For the first time in months, something like hope began to spread through the collective. Fleet, the humans had arrived, and they had brought chaos with them, with no hope left. They called humanity the most dangerous species alive. Part 3. The war room of the collective flagship had never been so crowded. Human and alien officers stood shoulder to shoulder, studying holographic displays of the coming battlefield. The Kethar swarm was 3 days away from the Vloc system, home to 4 billion civilians who could not be evacuated in time. Admiral Chen stood at the center of the room. Surrounded by her staff and the confused commanders of the collective fleet, our scouts report approximately 40,000 swarm vessels. Commander Trell announced. We have 300 human ships and roughly 200 collective vessels remaining. The mathematics are clear. We are outnumbered almost 100 to 1. Human officer named Captain Rodriguez grinned. Only 100 to 1? I was worried it might be challenging. The collective officers stared at him in disbelief. This is not a joke, Trell growled. Those are real numbers. Real death.
We know.
Admiral Chen said calmly. But Captain Rodriguez is right in one way. Numbers are not everything. The Kethar expect to win because they always win. That expectation is their greatest weakness. She activated a holographic display showing the typical Kethar attack pattern. For millions of years, the swarm has followed the same strategy. They approach in overwhelming numbers. They surround their prey. They consume everything. No species has ever successfully resisted them because no species has ever tried anything except running or fighting conventionally. What do you propose instead? Asked Elder Sitha. Chen nodded to Professor Singh, who stepped forward with a new display. We call it the Doctrine of Chaos. The Kethar hive mind is incredibly efficient, but efficiency requires predictability. They process information based on expected patterns. When something does not match their expectations, their response time slows while the collective consciousness tries to understand. Engineer Park continued. We have modified 50 human vessels with specialized equipment, electromagnetic pulse generators, sonic disruptors, holographic projectors, and something we call screamers. devices that broadcast signals on the same frequency the Kethar used to communicate with each other. You are going to talk to them? Forneth asked. Not exactly. We are going to scream at them. Imagine trying to have a conversation while someone shouts nonsense directly into your brain. That is what our screamers will do to their hive mind. Commander Terrell studied the tactical display. Even with disruption, we cannot defeat 40,000 ships. The mathematics have not changed. We are not trying to defeat them, Chen said. Not in this battle. We are trying to teach them something they have never learned before. We are teaching them that attacking us hurts. She pulled up a new battle plan. Phase 1. We engage the leading edge of the swarm. Not the whole fleet, just the front. We hit them hard and fast with everything we have. Then we retreat before they can surround us. Running away? Terrell looked disgusted. Repositioning. Chen corrected. Phase 2. They follow us because that is what they always do. Prey runs, they chase. But we are not running randomly. We are leading them into prepared positions where we have hidden automated weapons platforms. They arrive expecting a slaughter. Instead, they get ambushed. A young human pilot named Lieutenant Yuki spoke up. Phase 3 is my favorite. After the ambush, we do not press our advantage. We disappear completely. No communication, no movement, nothing. The swarm will stop and wait because they will not understand what is happening. That hesitation costs them time. Time means we can reposition again. And we keep doing this, Chen said. Hit and fade. Appear where they do not expect. Vanish before they can respond. Make every attack cost them more than they plan to spend. The Kethar have never had to think about costs before. We are going to make them learn. Forneth shook his head slowly. This is madness. You are treating war like a game. All war is a game, Chancellor. The side that understands the rules better usually wins. The Kethar think they know the rules. We are about to change them. 3 days later, the battle began. The swarm entered the Villox system like a dark cloud of death. 40,000 ships moving in perfect coordination, ready to consume another world. Scanners showed the combined human collective fleet waiting ahead. Hopelessly outnumbered. Or not even trying to retreat, observed the Kethar. Tactical analysis, which was shared instantly across the hive mind. The prey has accepted its death. The swarm pressed forward. Then the humans attacked. Not in neat formations. Not in predictable lines. Human ships scattered across the battlefield like sparks from a fire. They dove into the swarm from every direction, firing weapons and then vanishing before the Kethar could respond. The screamers activated. Across millions of kilometers, Kethar drones suddenly received conflicting signals. Move forward. Move backward. Attack. Retreat. The hive mind tried to filter the noise, but the humans kept changing frequencies. A collective officer watched in amazement as a single human frigate dove directly into a cluster of 30 Kethar vessels. She is going to be destroyed. But the frigate did not stay to fight. It fired a spread of missiles, released a cloud of blinding chaff, and shot away at angles that seemed physically impossible. The Kethar vessels tried to follow, but they collided with each other in the confusion. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human ships danced through the swarm, never staying in one place long enough to be caught. They did not try to destroy enemy vessels. They just created chaos. Then, exactly 14 minutes into the battle, Admiral Chen gave an order. All ships retreat to coordinates Gamma 7. The human fleet vanished. One moment they were everywhere, the next moment they were gone. Even their communication signals disappeared. The Kethar swarm stopped, for the first time in recorded history. The swarm hesitated. Their prey had not died. Their prey had not fled in terror. Their prey had attacked, hurt them, and then simply vanished. What was happening? The hive mind processed the confusion. Several hundred Kethar drones had been destroyed. Several thousand more were damaged. These were acceptable losses. But the loss was not the problem. The problem was that the swarm did not understand. They pressed forward toward the planet, expecting the enemy to reappear. Instead, they found a field of automated weapons platforms that activated as soon as the swarm ships were in range. More explosions, more losses, more confusion. The swarm adapted quickly, destroying the platforms. But when they resumed their advance, the human fleet reappeared behind them, hitting their rear guard, back on the collective flagship. Chancellor Vorneth watched the battle unfold with growing astonishment. "They are not winning," he said slowly, "but they are not losing either." "That is the point," said a human officer nearby. "We do not need to win today. We just need to survive and make them pay for every kilometer they advance." Eventually, even a hive mind starts to wonder if the meal is worth the cost. The battle raged for 6 hours. The swarm eventually reached the planet, but their losses were unlike anything they had experienced before. 1,200 ships destroyed, thousands more damaged, and the enemy was still out there, somewhere waiting. That night, collective intelligence intercepted something. Unprecedented communication within the Kethar swarm, not tactical. Coordination? Discussion? Small ones do not behave like prey. They return after we strike. Prey does not return. They cause pain and then vanish. We cannot catch them. What are they? Vorneth read the transcript with trembling hands. They are talking about us. The Kethar have never talked about their prey before. Admiral Chen smiled her sharp smile. They are not just talking, Chancellor. They are wondering. And wondering is the first step toward fear. The war had changed. The hunters were beginning to realize they might also be the hunted, with no hope left. They called humanity the most dangerous species alive. For 3 months had passed since the humans arrived. The war had transformed into something no one in the collective had expected. The Kethar swarm still outnumbered the combined fleet by enormous margins. They still controlled vast regions of space. They were still the most terrifying force in the known galaxy, but they had stopped advancing. For the first time in millions of years, the swarm was not consuming new territory. They were holding position, consolidating their forces, and waiting. The hive mind was trying to understand an enemy that refused to follow the rules. Meanwhile, humanity kept arriving. Not just warships anymore. Supply vessels filled with food and medicine docked with collective stations. Hospital ships offered treatment to wounded soldiers of every species. Engineering teams helped repair damaged infrastructure on refugee worlds. One ship caused particular confusion among the collective officers. It was a civilian transport carrying 300 humans, including 47 children. Their parents had refused to send them to safety on Earth. Why would you bring children to a war zone? Commander Trell demanded when the ship docked. A human mother named Maria answered, while holding her young son. Because running away is not who we are. Our children need to see that when people need help, you do not abandon them. Fear does not get to win. The boy looked up at the towering Druid commander with wide eyes. Are you the rock people? My mom says you are very brave. Trell, who had fought in a dozen wars without flinching, did not know how to respond to a child calling him brave. Admiral Chen used these 3 months well. Human engineers worked alongside collective scientists to develop new weapons. Human tacticians trained alien officers in unconventional warfare. Human doctors shared medical knowledge that saved thousands of lives. But Chen knew that survival was not victory. The swarm was still out there. The Queen Cluster, the central consciousness that coordinated all Kethar activity, remained untouched, as long as it survived. The swarm would eventually adapt and resume its advance. She called a meeting of her senior staff and the collective command council. We have bought time, she said, but time is running out. The swarm is learning. They are starting to anticipate our tactics. Within 2 months, they will have adapted enough to resume their offensive. We need to end this before that happens. How? Asked Vorneth. Even with everything we have accomplished, we cannot destroy the entire swarm. We do not need to destroy the swarm. We need to hurt them badly enough that they choose to stop fighting. And there is only one target that matters. Chen displayed a holographic map showing the location of the Cathar Queen Cluster, the central consciousness. The brain of the entire swarm. If we can damage it severely enough, we might trigger a collapse in their coordination, or at least make them reconsider whether we are worth the trouble. Commander Trell studied the map with grim eyes. The Queen Cluster is protected by their largest fleet concentration, 20,000 ships at minimum, plus defensive installations throughout the system. An assault would be suicide. Probably, Chen agreed. But it is also our only real chance at ending this war. You are asking soldiers to die for a small chance of success, Elder Sitha said quietly. I'm asking for volunteers only. No one will be ordered to join this mission. Anyone who flies will do so because they choose to. The call for volunteers went out that night. Chen expected perhaps a few hundred humans to respond. She was not prepared for what happened. Every human in the fleet volunteered. All 15,000 of them. Pilots, engineers, doctors, even the civilian families. Parents wrote letters explaining why they needed to fly this mission. Children asked if they could help somehow. But the surprise did not stop there. The next morning, Commander Trell entered Chen's office and stood at attention. Admiral, the Druin contingent wishes to join the assault. Chen blinked. Commander, this is a volunteer mission. Your people did not come here to die for us, but we came here to survive. And you have shown us that survival sometimes requires risk. His stone face cracked slightly with something that might have been a smile. Besides, it would be shameful to let the small soft ones fight alone. One by one, officers from every collective species came forward. The Malthri offered their fastest ships. The Finari volunteered their best pilots, even the Veluxi, whose people were scholars rather than warriors, sent researchers who wanted to analyze the Queen Cluster if the assault succeeded for the first time. The collective and humanity would fight together as true allies. The assault fleet assembled at the edge of Cathar territory. 500 ships facing 20,000. The mathematics were still terrible. But something had changed in the eyes of every soldier and officer. They were no longer fighting to delay defeat. They were fighting to win. Admiral Chen addressed the combined fleet via hologram. What we are about to attempt has never been done. The Cathar have never been challenged at their heart. They do not believe anyone would dare. That disbelief is our greatest weapon. She paused, looking at the faces of humans and aliens alike. Some of us will not return. I will not pretend otherwise. But if we succeed, we will have proven something important. We will have proven that the Cathar are not invincible, that they can be hurt, that they can be afraid, and that the people they thought were prey are actually predators. Lieutenant Yuki spoke up from her fighter cockpit. Admiral, permission to speak freely? Granted. I joined this mission because my grandmother survived the Pacific War on Earth. She was 5 years old when her city was bombed. She grew up in ruins and still managed to build a good life. She taught me that hope is not about expecting things to be easy. It is about refusing to quit when things are hard. Yuki's voice was steady. The Cathar think we are soft because we die easily. They do not understand that dying easily is exactly why we fight so hard to live. Across the fleet, voices murmured in agreement. Well said, Lieutenant. Chen turned to her tactical display. All ships begin final approach. Remember your training. Remember why we are here. And remember that the universe is watching. The assault began. 500 ships plunged into the heart of Cathar space. The swarm responded instantly. Thousands of vessels converging to defend their queen. The void filled with weapons, fire, and explosions. Human ships wove through the chaos, drawing fire away from the main assault group. Collective vessels provided covering bombardment. The plan was working, but the cost was terrible. Ships vanished from the display, each one representing hundreds of lives lost. Then something unexpected happened. A collective cruiser commanded by Captain Vorin of the Molthri broke formation and accelerated toward a gap in the Cathar defenses. His ship was heavily damaged, trailing fire and debris. Captain Vorin returned to formation. Trell ordered. Negative, Commander. Varen's voice was calm despite his dying ship. I am creating an opening. The human strike team must reach the Queen Cluster. Tell them to follow my path. The Malthury cruiser plowed into the Cathar defensive line, its weapons firing until the very end. The explosion tore a hole in the swarm's formation. All strike craft follow that opening. Chen commanded. Human fighters and bombers poured through the gap. They reached the Queen Cluster's outer defenses and unleashed everything they had. Missiles, energy weapons, and specialized warheads designed to disrupt quantum neural networks. The Queen Cluster was not destroyed, but it was damaged. Badly damaged. Across Cathar space, the swarm suddenly lost coordination. Ships that had been moving in perfect formation began drifting. Attack patterns fell apart. For precious minutes, the hive mind was silent. All ships, retreat. Chen ordered. We have done what we came to do. The surviving fleet fled, leaving behind the wreckage of friends and enemies alike. They had lost nearly 200 ships. Thousands were dead, but they had accomplished the impossible. 2 days later, collective intelligence detected a transmission from the Cathar Queen Cluster. Not internal communication. A direct broadcast on open channels intended to be heard. The message was simple. We wish to speak. What are you? The war had reached its turning point. For the first time in their existence, the Cathar wanted to talk, with no hope left. They called humanity the most dangerous species alive. Part 5. The meeting point was a dead moon orbiting a burned-out star. No life had existed here for billions of years. It was neutral territory, chosen specifically because neither side valued it. Admiral Chen stood in the shuttle bay of her flagship, preparing to board a small transport. She had insisted on conducting this meeting personally, despite objections from almost everyone around her. This is a trap, Commander Trell said, for the 20th time. The Cathar do not negotiate. They consume. This is merely a new hunting strategy, perhaps Chen agreed. But if there is even a small chance to end this war without more death, I have to take it. Chancellor Vornath stepped forward. Then I will accompany you. My people started this by sending the transmission. I should be present for whatever happens next. Chen studied the alien chancellor for a moment, then nodded. Very well. But if things go wrong, your priority is to escape and warn the fleet. The shuttle descended to the moon's surface. Outside, the landscape was gray and lifeless. Waiting for them was a shape that made Vornath's blood run cold. A Cathar stood alone on the rocky ground. But this was not a drone. This was something far more disturbing. A fragment of the Queen Cluster itself, given temporary physical form. Thousands of compound eyes covered its body. Its shape was vaguely humanoid, but wrong in ways that hurt to look at directly. Chen walked toward it without hesitation. Vornath followed, fighting the instinct to run. You came, the Cathar fragment said. Its voice was strange, like many voices speaking at once. We did not expect you to come alone. I am not much of a threat by myself, Chen said. One old human with bad knees. If you wanted to kill me, you would have done so already. Kill you? No, we want to understand you. The fragment's many eyes focused on her with unsettling intensity. For millions of years, we have consumed. Every species we encountered behaved the same way. They fled. They fought. They died. The pattern never changed. Until you. We are stubborn, Chen said simply. It is more than stubbornness. You are weak. Your bodies are fragile. Your lifespans are brief. You die easily. Yet you do not surrender. You attack when retreat would save you. You sacrifice yourselves for strangers. Our models cannot predict your behavior because your behavior makes no logical sense. Chen smiled slightly. Logic is not everything. Then what is? What drives you to fight when victory is impossible? What makes you refuse to accept inevitable defeat? Chen thought carefully before answering. This was not just a conversation. This was a test. The future of the war might depend on what she said next. Let me tell you about my species, she said finally. We have existed for only a short time compared to you. In that time, we have done terrible things to each other. Wars, genocides, cruelties that would horrify even you. We have nearly destroyed ourselves many times. The Cathar fragment listened silently. But we have also done remarkable things. We have built civilizations from ashes. We have turned enemies into friends. We have crossed oceans and mountains and the void between stars because something inside us refuses to accept limits. Chen met the fragment's many eyes. We are not strong because we do not fear death. We fear death very much. We are strong because we have learned that some things matter more than survival. What things? Each other. The people we love. The strangers we have never met who might need our help. The future we will never see, but want to make better anyway. Chen gestured at the dead moon around them. You asked what we are? We are the species that answers when someone calls for help. We are the species that fights for people we do not know. We are the species that hopes even when hope seems foolish. The fragment was silent for a long time. Vornith realized he was holding his breath. The swarm has existed for millions of years, the fragment finally said. We have consumed countless worlds. We have never been stopped. We have never been afraid. Until now? Are you afraid of us? We are afraid of what you represent. You are chaos in a universe we thought we understood. You are unpredictability in a system that should be predictable. You make us question whether consuming is the only way to survive. Chen leaned forward. It is not. There are other ways. Ways that do not require endless death. Teach us. The words hung in the air. Vorneth could not believe what he was hearing. The greatest terror in the galaxy was asking humanity for guidance. Chen nodded slowly. We will, but first, the war must end. Your swarm must withdraw from collective space. No more consumption. No more expansion. In return, we will help you find another path. This is acceptable to part of the collective consciousness. Other parts resist. They fear change more than they fear you, and those parts will need to be convinced. We have time. We are patient. You're also mortal. You will die long before we change. Chen smiled. I will, but my people will continue. That is another thing about humans. We think in generations. We plant trees whose shade we will never enjoy. We build futures we will never see. Our lives are short, but our dreams are very long. The negotiations took 3 more days. Many details needed to be resolved. Many guarantees needed to be made. Some parts of the swarm resisted the ceasefire and had to be persuaded by the Queen Cluster itself. But in the end, an agreement was reached. The Cathar would withdraw from all collective territory. A buffer zone would be established. Communication channels would remain open, and humanity would serve as intermediaries, helping 2 very different forms of life learn to coexist. 6 months later, Chancellor Vornith stood on the balcony of a newly rebuilt government center on Vorax Prime. Below him, the city was coming back to life. Construction crews of a dozen species worked side by side. Human engineers supervised the installation of new power systems. Veluxi scholars established schools. Fenari artists painted murals celebrating survival and hope. Admiral Chen stood beside him, leaning on a cane. She was older now, tired from months of peace negotiations that had been almost as exhausting as the war itself. Your people have done something remarkable, Vornith said. You have changed the course of galactic history. The Cathar are learning to farm instead of consume. The collective is stronger than ever. All because you answered our call. You just showed up, Chen said. You did the rest. You make it sound simple. It is simple. Someone needed help. We helped. Everything else is just details. A young collective child ran up to them, followed by 2 human children around the same age. They had been playing together in the plaza below. Admiral Chen. The collective child said, Will you tell us a story? The humans say you know the best stories. Chen smiled and lowered herself slowly to sit on a bench. The children gathered around her, human and alien alike. Let me tell you about a planet called Earth, she began. A small world in a quiet corner of the galaxy. The people there were not very strong or very fast. They did not live very long. But they had something that made them special. What was it? Asked one of the human children, Hope Chen said. No matter how bad things got, they never stopped hoping. And when they heard that someone far away needed help, They did not ask what they would get in return. They did not worry about the danger. They simply packed their bags, said goodbye to their homes, and flew across the stars. Why? The collective child asked. Chen looked at the mixed group of children, the future of a galaxy that had almost been consumed by darkness. Because that is what humans do, she said. When someone needs help, we show up. That is the whole secret. We just show up. Above them, ships from a dozen worlds crossed the sky. Human vessels flew alongside collective cruisers. Even a few Kethar observers could be seen in the distance, learning what it meant to share the universe rather than consume it. The war was over. The future had begun, and humanity had proven that sometimes the most dangerous thing in the universe is simply refusing to give up.